Hey, folks, in chapter 7, we're going to study probability. So, probability relies on us getting an accurate count of how events could happen. How many different ways could something occur? And so there's a fair amount of vocabulary we got to manage in this chapter. So I want you to start by getting your homework, your notes organized, and putting down plenty of notes and information in your math notebook so that you can keep all these concepts straight. All right. So first, I don't know if anybody watched the football games yesterday. There were two games on because it's the AFC and the NFC championship games to see who goes to the Super Bowl. And in the AFC, we had the Chiefs over here on the left and the Bengals on the right. And in football, it's a timed event. Okay, so there's a certain right. They start the clock and it runs in the first quarter, second quarter. They have a halftime, then they have a third quarter and a fourth quarter, and the game's over after a particular amount of time. But when we think about how many different ways could this event occur, like how many different ways could the Chiefs win? By the way, they won by 3 points. Or how many different ways the Bengals could have won the game. There's probably an infinite number of different ways the outcome could have happened. And what I mean by that is the Chiefs could have won. Let's just put it like a capital C down. The Chiefs could have won by 1 point. They could have won by 2 points, 3 points, ... right? And there's no limit on the number of points a team could win by in the NFL, with the exception of there's going to be a time limit. So maybe there's some theoretical number where we do actually get to a spot where we say, you know what, it's going to end. The game is going to end at some point because it's timed. All right. Now let's look at a different situation where in baseball, like the Mariners, when the Mariners play, that game is not timed, right? So they play 9 innings. Doesn't matter if it takes you 2 hours to play 1 inning and you score 50 runs. Now, is that likely to happen? No. But they could play forever, okay? So we're going to look at that complicated situation in just a second. But I want you to think back to Little League. A lot of you guys played in Little League. And Little League has a rule where a team, if they're winning by more than 10 runs, we'll just leave it at that. It's a little bit more complicated than that. But if you're winning by 10 runs, they just say, you know what, game's over, okay? So this team, they look like they're from Woodland. I don't know where Woodland is, but let's say they're the Woodland Vikings, all right? And they could win. So let's put down W for Woodland. They could win by 1 run, 2 runs, 3 runs, 4 runs, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, or they could win by 10 runs, right? The Woodland Tigers or the Woodland Vikings, whatever, they could win by that many. So there's 10 possibilities for ways that they could win the game, right? So this is a finite situation. And this one over here is an infinite situation where there's infinitely many different ways that the Chiefs could have won. All right. Now, how about we take and compare? There's a word called discrete here. So we're going to get infinite discrete. I'm going to add a vocabulary word right here. I was claiming that in the NFL, it's discrete because there's a time limit. So there is going to be a time when it runs out, and the Chiefs can only win by so many runs. The game's going to be over at some point. Where if you look at the Mariners could win by 1 run, 2 runs, 3 runs, and so on. And that is an infinite continuous situation. And again, sports, you might disagree with this. Like there would be some limit to this. But continuous would mean that the game would go on forever, okay? Discrete means the game's going to come to a stop. This is a rough understanding of what these words mean. And I want you to think about those concepts as you're trying to answer some of the homework questions today, okay? Now, you can see already that these situations can get kind of complex. So what we want to do is have a way to keep ourselves organized. We're going to make an organized list. And one way to make an organized list is, let's call these guys the Woodland Vikings. Okay, so I'm going to say WV for Woodland Vikings, right? So the Woodland Vikings, they could win their game. I'm going to put a W down for win, and they could win the game by 1 point, right? Or they could win the game by 2 points, or they could win the game by, I should say, runs. I mean, they're called runs in baseball. Or the Woodland Vikings could win by 4, and so on, right? So sometimes you'll see this, like mathematicians get tired of listing them all, so they'll put dot dot dot, and then we could say they could win by, oops, shoot, I didn't mean to do that. They could win by 8 runs, right? So I put parentheses around this. And if you remember, the rule in Little League is a 10-run rule, right? So I'm going to put they could win by 9, or they could win by 10. All right. Now, what's the other possibility? Well, they could lose, right? So they could lose by 1. They could lose by, son of a gun. They could lose by 2 runs. They could lose by 3 runs. So this is called an organized list, right? Super simple. And I want you to jot a few of these down so that you can keep this straight in your homework. Now, what they'll often do with a list is they'll put brackets around it. These curly brackets mean, hey, here's a list of things that could occur, and they put commas between these. All right. Now, don't those look like ordered pairs the way I've written them? Right? Yeah, I mean they do, because there were 2 possibilities for that list. Okay, so I'm looking back, and they put this in page 366. So just as a reminder, right? We've got a book, and the book you can look at, the online copy, and here it is on page 366. They're listing them as ordered pairs. All right, and that's what I'm doing too. Now, I hope somebody is saying, wait, how many are there right here? I think there are 10 ways that they could win, 10 ways that they could lose, right? So that makes a total of 20. And then we're going to put another one on here for a tie. So, Jiminy, I don't know what to put down. I guess I'll put a T for tie. And I'm going to put down 0. There's only one way, and you would have, a difference of 0 runs, right? Now, could we make a table? Yes. Okay. Now, I'm not going to make a table of all these because there's 21 of those guys. So let's make a little table for the football game. All right. So what did we have going on? We had the Bengals and the Chiefs. Bengals, and we had the Chiefs, and we had the possibility of winning and losing. So we had win and lose, right, over here. And so, what could we do in this table? Well, they could win by, this doesn't make sense, right? This table right here. How are we going to make a table? Oh, I know what I was thinking on this. I wasn't thinking Bengals win or lose here, Bengals Chiefs. I was thinking, let's figure out who's going to the Super Bowl, right? Or what are the possibilities for the Super Bowl? And so we had the other 2 teams were the Eagles and the 49ers. I'll just put 49ers over here. Okay. And so what could happen? It could be the Bengals and the Eagles, right? It could be the Bengals and the 49ers. It could be the Chiefs and the Eagles, or it could be the Chiefs and the 49ers. So this little box right here would represent Bengals and Eagles, and this would be the Chiefs and the Eagles. And this box over here would be the Bengals and the 49ers. I'll put Niners. And the Chiefs and the Niners. Okay. So sometimes making a table of values kind of helps us keep things organized. All right. And then there's a tree diagram. So what does a tree diagram look like? And what are we doing here? We're just trying to count the outcomes. So what are the outcomes here, right? And so let's go back to the baseball example of the Woodland Vikings, okay? So they could, so what are the possible outcomes here? They could have they could win, or they could lose. And then how many different ways are there for them to win the game? with the Little League rules in place, well, they could win it by 1, 2, 3, 8, 9, 10. So there's 10 different ways over here. And then over here, we'd have the same kind of thing going on. We'd try to make a little diagram to show 1, 2, 8, 9, 10. So there's 10 different ways over here. And this is called a tree diagram. All right. Now, with all of that out of the way, there is a principle called the fundamental counting principle. And here's where things kind of get a little bit different. They change a little bit. So all of these discussion points that we had up here were, with the exception of this one right here, were like, what are the ways that this game right here could have come out? This game could have been, or this game over here, the Witham Vikings could have won by 1. They could have won by 2, 3, 4, such and such. But when you start counting or doing the fundamental counting principle, we're talking about 2 events happening or 3 events happening. So, for example, in this counting situation with the table, with the Eagles, there was 4 teams, right? There were 2 different games yesterday. There was the AFC game. So this over here is the AFC. And this over here was the NFC, right? So because there were 2 games, there were 2 different ways in the AFC game. There were 2 different ways that game could have come out. And in the NFC game, because there are no ties in those, all right? So you have the Bengals or the Chiefs. You have the Eagles or the 49ers. And if you want to know the total possible ways the whole thing could come out for a Super Bowl, total possible outcomes, you're just going to multiply these 2 together. So 2 times 2 gives us 4. So let's check it out. In the Super Bowl, it could be the Bengals and the Eagles. It could be the Bengals and the Niners. Could have been the Chiefs and the Eagles. Could have been the Chiefs and the Niners. It happens to be, if you're a football fan, you know this now, it's going to be the Chiefs and the Eagles, right? The 49ers had some issues at quarterback yesterday. Some people got hurt. And so, not that they would have won if they had their main quarterback, but it didn't work that way. The Eagles won. And so it's the Chiefs and the Eagles in the Super Bowl. So it's, we now know what happened. But if before we were trying to study this, there'd be 4 possible ways that the Super Bowl could have been set up. All right. So this is called the fundamental counting principle, or sometimes they call it the multiplication principle, where you take the number of events in one situation times the number of events in the second situation, and you just multiply them together. All right. Hey, we're hopefully starting out kind of simple here. Sometimes when you start out simple, you're like, what? We're just counting the number of ways things could happen. Yeah, that's what we're doing. So I hope I made that clear. Thanks for watching my video.